Hold their lamp wide and kindle with the fire of the love of God. Verily I read thy recent letter which showed thy strong love, thy being ablaze with the fire of the love of thy Lord, the mighty and the praised, and the penetration of the Spirit of truth, of truth. Hold the lamp wide and kindle with the fire of the love of God. Verily I read thy recent letter which showed thy strong love, thy being blaze, the fire of the love of thy Lord, the mighty and the praised, and the penetration of the Spirit of truth, of truth. The fire of the love of thy Lord, the fire of the love of thy Lord, the mighty, the praised, the fire of the love of thy Lord, the mighty and the praised, the fire of the love of thy Lord, of truth, of truth. My limbs, nerves, veins, arteries, bones, blood and flesh, until the reins of power have been taken from my hands, and moveth thee as it willeth, and causeth thee to speak in what it willeth, and attracteth thee as it willeth. This is becoming of whatever heart is replenished with the Spirit of the love of God. Thou shalt surely behold wondrous traces, and shall discover the signs of thy mighty Lord. The fire of the love of thy Lord, the fire of the love of thy Lord, the mighty and the praise, and the penetration of the Spirit, the mighty, the praise, the fire of the love of thy Lord, of truth, of truth.
First of all, the Baha'i teaching is the harmony of science and religion as the two most potent forces in society. Each has a jurisdiction, and each must exercise its power. So the role of science is in what they call the area of phenomenology, the study of the material, the physical universe, etc., from the macro, the stars, to the micro, the atom, and you get into quantum mechanics and everything else. Now, historically, we've had a problem, but the problem did not come from any of the revealed truths of various faiths. It came from the add-ons. Let me give you an example. My grandmother, who was a dear soul, and very enlightened for her time, said Mrs. Jones across the street was such a good woman she'd probably get into heaven. Now, Mrs. Jones was a Protestant. At that time, my grandmother and her flock, if you want, believed that heaven was ours. Furthermore, if you ask Grandma, where's heaven? She'd say, up. If you'd say, where's hell? Down. That wasn't taught by Christ, okay? It was not taught by Christ that there's only one faith. He said, in fact, other sheep have I not of this fold, them too must I gather. And by the way, that's today. That's the ingathering, they shall be one. That's today. The Baha'is from whatever background you imagine. Now, Galileo, when he suggested that the earth was not the center of the universe, was threatened with excommunication. He offered to let the church doctors look through his telescope. They refused because they considered an instrument of the devil. Now, the whole notion of devil, of hell as a place, of heaven as a place, does not come from anything authoritative. It doesn't, okay? So if religion teaches something contrary to science, Baha'u'llah says, it's superstition. Okay? Reality is reality. They must be in harmony. As we said earlier, each having its distinctive roles. The fruits of science and technology must, however, be tamed or channeled by ethical decisions. Albert Einstein said, religion without science is dumb. Science without religion is blind. Now, most people think that poor Albert was a raving atheist, etc. I'm not convinced that's true. He certainly didn't subscribe to traditional religions. And because of the Holocaust, he wrote some rather scathing letters about the role of certain faiths in that unfortunate tragedy. But what he's saying in that quote is, science does not have an ethical basis. Science will give us nuclear theory. We can build a bomb. We can build a cancer cure. It's not a question for science. It's a question for ethics. Or to be more precise, what is the human value between the two? So science is directed by ethics, the same as individual behavior is. The human mind, as we say, is either an angelic, a beautiful, or a diabolical instrument. We've seen throughout history very brilliant people who have done exceptionally good things and very brilliant people who have done horrendous things to humanity. It wasn't the brain that came up with that. It is the absence of spiritual principles. So the two together, okay, form, as we said earlier, the two most potent forces in society, must be in harmony and must cooperate. It's interesting that what is happening in science, I like to follow science. It's not my background, but the philosophy of science I can follow and I like. What's happening in science is they're becoming closer and closer to the spiritual teachings of the Baha'i faith. Now, in every faith you're going to get certain little zingers, as I call them. For example, in the Quran, this is the year 600, there's a reference to the earth as an orb, a globe. 600 years later, in Europe, they thought the earth was flat. As a matter of fact, in Eastern Europe, we have documentation where the people in a village wouldn't travel more than 2 weeks from the village for fearing falling off the edge of the earth. Okay? Here, 800 years before, 700 years, the earth, There's another reference, you split the atom and you'll find the sun. And the Baha'i writings have a number of, if you want, pointers to the role of science, and a couple about the nature of science. Okay? For example, every fixed star hath its planets, and each planet creatures the numbers of which no mind can compute. Now, I'm not going to get into the existence of aliens. Wouldn't surprise me if there's other intelligent life. But that leads us to a second question. When we talk about what it is to be human, we need to, in my opinion, get our heads straight and concentrate less on whether we come from apes, okay? We used to drag our knuckles, okay? Yes, we have evolved, Abdu'l-Baha says, okay? We have evolved and become more finer of form, more graceful, more intellectual, and more spiritual. That's what civilization is about. But the distinguishing characteristic of the human being is not physical. It is intellectual. And even there we have to distinguish, okay? Because dogs have intellect. The most intelligent dogs can have the IQ of a 2-year-old, okay? I love dogs, by the way. But they do not have what distinguishes the human being. The capacity to understand the reality of things. That's what makes us human. That's why we are given, in this age especially, such a quantum leap in both science and its offspring, if you want, technology, and religious revelation, which helps us understand the phenomenal world and also understands ourselves as human beings, what we are created for. We are created for service. We are created to become noble.